They help kill a god, not a minor god, not some forgotten deity rotting in a forgotten temple. The actual, undisputed, everyone acknowledges his ruler, else ruler of an entire continent. A being so powerful that the other gods in the world, gods themselves, quietly sat down, nodded, and said, "Fine, you win, we're not fighting this." That god, dead. And here's the part that nobody talks about enough. After the killing, after the war, after every impossible thing they had to do to get there, the two men responsible for all of it had to sit down across from each other and share power. Same throne room, same empire, two rulers, zero trust. And somewhere in the back of both their minds, the same thought, loud and unavoidable: this is not going to end well. Welcome to the fourth epoch of Lord of Mysteries, the era of the four emperors, the century that broke the world and built it back in pieces. The story where every player is brilliant, every move is calculated, and every single one of them still loses. And at the center of it all stands one man, the man nobody picked, the man who is too dangerous to trust, too useful to ignore, and too mad to stop. His name is Alista Tudor, and before this is over, he will have killed 3 ancient angels, betrayed 6 gods, lost his mind, and become something the world had never seen before. Let us start from the beginning. For as long as anyone in this world can remember, the northern continent has belonged to one name: Solomon, the Black Emperor, sequence 0, the top of the power ladder in this entire world. The point where a human being who has been drinking potions and advancing through sequences for long enough stops being a person and starts being something more like a law of physics. Solomon does not hold his empire together through violence alone, though he certainly has enough of it. He holds it together through something far more clever. His rule runs on a single golden principle: nobody under him is allowed to get along. Every noble family in the Solomon Empire, and there are many, the Zeridal family, the Abraham family, the Zoros family, the ancient Medici, is kept in a state of constant, low-level conflict with every other noble family. They fight over resources, over territory, over influence, over old grudges that Solomon himself probably started. And because they spend all their energy competing with each other, none of them ever organize against him. Deliberate disharmony. As a management strategy, for an empire, it works perfectly. And if that were not enough, Solomon has a second layer of protection that most people do not advertise: the true creator. One of the most ancient and dangerous forces in the entire world, sitting behind the throne like a silent partner, lending the Black Emperor a level of backing that makes most other powers think very carefully before causing trouble. So for centuries, genuinely, for a very long time, Solomon rules unchallenged. But here's the thing about perfect systems: they produce exactly one kind of blind spot, the thing they were not designed to see. Solomon designed his system to prevent his most powerful subordinates from uniting against him. The Duke families, the greatest nobles, the ones with actual divine power and ancient lineages, are the ones he watches. They're the threats he accounts for. 2 names he does not watch closely enough: Tudor and Trunsoest. They're not dukes. They're not the highest ranked. In the imperial hierarchy, they sit below Zoroast, below Abraham, below Zeridal. They are sequence 2 beyonders of the Black Emperor pathway. Powerful, yes. Respected, yes. But not the most important people in the room. Which means nobody is watching them. That is their first advantage, and they use it well. The 6 orthodox gods have been living alongside Solomon's empire for a long time in a state of uncomfortable, frustrated tolerance. They are not powerless. They are actual gods. But Solomon at sequence 0 with a true creator's backing is a different category of problem. Direct confrontation is expensive, possibly catastrophic, and the gods have been unable to find a moment when the odds felt right. They have been waiting for the right people. When they find Tudor and Trunsoest, they make their move. 6 gods, 1 coordinated push, full divine support for 2 ambitious angels who are tired of sitting beneath a throne they helped maintain. But here is the detail that changes everything about how this story develops. The gods pick Trunsoest, not Tudor. Trunsoest. Their assessment of both men is careful and deliberate. Trunsoest is calm, precise, cooperative, the kind of person you can build a long-term arrangement with. Tudor, on the other hand, is extreme, unpredictable, difficult to work with when things do not go exactly as planned. The gods want a partner they can manage after the dust settles. Tudor is the useful weapon. Trunsoest is the future emperor. Tudor knows this. He almost certainly knows this from the beginning. He shows up and helps anyway. They fight. They win. Solomon, the Black Emperor, the untouchable, the ruler of the continent, backed by the true creator himself, is killed. Both Tudor and Trunsoest advance to sequence 1 in the aftermath. Both become Prince of Abolition of the Black Emperor pathway. And from the wreckage of the empire they just dismantled, they build something new. The Tudor-Trunsoest United Empire. Its capital is set at the city that will one day become Backlund, the same Victorian metropolis that Klein Moretti walks through in the main story 1500 years later. Right now, it is the seat of 2 co-rulers and the center of a continent that just watched its god die. The government runs on a double consul system with the Senate backing both of them. 2 emperors, 1 continent, shared authority. On paper, it looks like a solution. It is a countdown. Because Solomon does not stay dead. This is the thing about gods at the peak of their sequence. They are not easy to permanently kill. Their characteristics scatter, Their divine power disperses, but some thread of their being remains, and given enough time, it reconstitutes. Solomon is coming back, slowly, inevitably, like a tide that everyone can see approaching from a distance, and nobody can actually stop. And the problem this creates for Tudor and Trunsoest is specific, technical, and absolutely deadly. When a sequence 0 Beyonder who distributed characteristics to their subordinates comes back from death, they can pull those characteristics back. Not ask, not request. Pull. Forcibly detach them from whoever currently holds them and return them to their original source. Tudor and Trunsoest are both sequence 1 princes of abolition. Those characteristics came from the Black Emperor pathway. When Solomon fully revives, both of them will either drop instantly from sequence 1 back to sequence 2, or die outright in the separation. They need to advance beyond sequence 1 before he returns. The gods move immediately for Trunsoest. They help him switch to the Justiciar pathway, a neighboring pathway he can safely transition to, and push him all the way to sequence 0. He becomes the Night Emperor, a true god, divine, powerful, fully endorsed, with 6 gods standing behind him. Trunsoest also does something politically significant during this period. He marries Ornia, the Blood Moon Queen, the ancient ruler of the Sanguines. She is a king of angels in her own right, holding the beauty goddess characteristics that trace back to the fallen Sanguine ancestor Lilith herself. What starts as a political arrangement becomes something genuine. The author of Lord of Mysteries confirmed in his notes that through the years they spent together, the two developed real feelings for each other. Their union brings the entire Sanguine race firmly into Trunsoest coalition. Now Trunsoest has 6 gods, for noble families, and an ancient race of blood-wielding immortals. Tudor is standing alone, looking at a locked door. The gods gave their endorsement to Trunsoest. The neighboring pathways are taken. There is no clean, authorized path forward for him. His Prince of Abolition characteristics are going to be ripped away by Solomon's revival, and when he falls, nobody is going to catch him. So Tudor does not look for a door. He looks for a window. The window is a man named Adam. Adam does not appear in this story for simple reasons. He leads the Twilight Hermit Order. He has been running experiments on the fundamental mechanics of the universe for longer than most empires have existed. He is not interested in thrones or divine politics. He is interested in hypotheses, proofs, outcomes that no other being has managed to test, because no other being had the patience or the nerve. And Alista Tudor, cornered, cut off, staring directly at his own annihilation, is the most interesting experimental subject he has seen in a very long time. Adam comes to Tudor with a plan. He has identified a pathway that is technically available, that nobody else is currently positioned to claim, and that could get Tudor to sequence 0 before Solomon returns. The Red Priest pathway, the pathway of war, calamity, and destruction. It has 3 sequence 1 angels sitting at the top. Ancient, powerful, dangerous beings who have survived for epochs precisely because they never stopped watching for threats. They are Medici, Sauron, and Einhorn. Medici is the most formidable of the 3. He is not just a sequence 1. He is a former king of angels from the era of the ancient sun god, an innate mythical creature who has held the Red Priest uniqueness itself. He has survived catastrophes that erased other ancient beings. He is precisely the kind of enemy that a sane person does not walk up to and attack. Medici is also prepared for betrayal. Here is the crack. Here is the opening that changes everything. Medici is watching for the wrong enemy. His defensive attention is pointed at the primordial Demonis, a genuine, reasonable threat he has real history with. He has prepared for that attack, built his defenses around it, and kept his eyes aimed in that direction. He is not watching Tudor. And the moment Medici is occupied dealing with Sauron, who has already fallen into the trap, Tudor hits him from the side he never covered. Medici falls first, then Sauron, then Einhorn. 3 ancient sequence 1 angels. 3 beings who had survived for longer than most nations have existed. Gone. The evil spirit that their remnant consciousness eventually forms, Einhorn Medici, will later tell Klein Moretti, many centuries afterward, something that sounds almost personal. The descendants of the Tudor bloodline are usually crafty, devious, careful, and cautious. But at critical moments they become reckless and stop counting consequences. It says this is someone who experienced that recklessness directly. After the killings, Tudor goes underground. Not literally, though the chamber is underground. Deep beneath what will become Backlund, in a secret space washed over only by stone statues of the 6 gods he is about to leave behind forever, he performs the ritual. Switching to a non-neighboring pathway at sequence 0 level does not come free. The cost is paid in sanity. The further the jump from a compatible pathway, the more of yourself you lose to the transition. Tudor jumps across pathway groups entirely. Red Priest is not neighboring Black Emperor. This is not a gentle transition. This is a controlled fall into something the human mind was not designed to contain. He takes in the Red Priest uniqueness. He absorbs the Beyonder characteristics of 3 fallen angels. He becomes sequence 0, Red Priest. The Blood Emperor is born. Half mad, fully divine, free from any debt to any god who ever tried to manage him. The United Empire collapses the moment this happens. The Hornaces mountain range becomes the wall between 2 empires that used to share a throne. They were never going to last anyway. Now there is simply no reason to pretend otherwise. What Tudor builds on the western side of that mountain range is unlike anything the northern continent has seen before. The Tudor Empire covers what will eventually become the Intis Republic and parts of the northwestern highlands of Fanapotter. Its capital is Trier, not the modern Trier that characters in a later story walk through. The original Trier, the one that will later sink underground during the Final War, with a modern city built on top of it specifically to act as a seal. Because what happened there was too dangerous to leave uncovered. Flanking him are 5 angel families: Abraham, Antigonus, Ammon, Jacob, and Tamara. Each of them controls a different pathway. Together, they give Tudor access to King of Angels level abilities across multiple different power systems simultaneously. Through Bethel Abraham of the Door pathway, through the Antigonus family, through Ammon the Angel of Time, who is one of the most cunning beings alive. Adam and the Twilight Hermit Order complete the picture. Tudor's empire is aligned with nobody, not the 6 gods, not the true creator. It occupies a strange third position, too dangerous to ignore, too unpredictable to ally with, too powerful to push around. And Tudor himself holds the whole unstable coalition together through the one thing that the half-mad are sometimes uniquely capable of: absolute force of personality. He does not allow his 5 noble families to get comfortable with each other. He keeps their internal dynamics tense. He is, in other words, running the same management philosophy Solomon used, just pointed at different people from the inside. Across the mountain, Trunsoest Empire looks completely different. The Trunsoest Empire covers what will become, essentially, all of the Lone Kingdom, plus most of Fanapotter. Its capital stays at Backlund. Its divine backing is 7 orthodox gods, 6 from the beginning, and 7 once the count grows. Its noble supporters are the Augustus, Castilla, Einhorn, and Sauron families. The Sanguines stand behind Aurnia, who stands beside Trunsoest. On paper there is no contest. No faction in the world has ever assembled this kind of structural advantage. The most powerful divine coalition in history, backed by ancient noble families, supported by an immortal race, and they cannot end it. They fight to a stalemate for approximately 500 years. 500 years. The reason is simple and terrible. When Tudor's madness fully takes hold, something shifts. The records describe the half-mad Blood Emperor at his worst, as capable of burying every other god in the war. His partial merger with the primordial Demonis, a consequence of events set in motion by Adam long before the war, begins to awaken something far older and far more dangerous inside him. The cost of that power is that he is no longer truly himself. He does not calculate consequences the way a sane god does. He does not step back from edges. A god who does not care about falling cannot be cornered. And that is why the strongest empire in history could not close the gap. Then there is the 4th player, the one who watched everything from the south and decided, very deliberately, that this was his moment. Salinger, the underworld emperor, the death god, sequence 0 of the death pathway, ruler of the Balaam Empire in the southern continent. The empire that Solomon himself chose not to challenge, as a deliberate act of strategic balance. Solomon left the south alone because a stable south meant one less front to manage. Salinger built his empire under that arrangement and waited. When Solomon falls, when a northern continent fractures into 3 competing powers, Salinger looks at the chaos and makes a calculation. He joins the war of the 4 emperors, all 4 sequence 0s of the era in the same conflict at the same time. Solomon returning from death to reclaim what was taken from him, Trunsoest commanding the full force of divine legitimacy, Tudor burning at the edge of his own madness, and Salinger playing the 4th side, looking for the opening that benefits him most. 3 of the 4 die in the war or directly because of it. Solomon falls, Tudor falls, Trunsoest falls. The only empire still standing when the fighting ends is the Trunsoest Empire, technically. But Salinger is not done. His ambitions do not stop at winning the war. He tries something that no one has managed before, fusing the river of eternal darkness, a river that flows through death itself, with the Red Priest uniqueness, the same divine characteristic that Tudor took from Medici. His goal is to carve out an entirely new path to becoming a great old one, a being above sequence 0, above the gods, something closer to the ancient forces that predate the entire current world order. The attempt destroys his mind. The Death God, now mad, and the primordial Demonis together unleash what history calls the Pale Era. A catastrophe so severe, so widespread, that it takes all 7 orthodox gods fighting together to bring it to an end. Salinger is destroyed. The Balaam Empire falls. And the Trunsoest Empire, the last empire standing from the war, is finally broken by the aftermath of the Pale Era. The continent that survived 4 emperors does not survive their consequences. When the gods look at what is left, they make a decision that is, in context, surprisingly sensible. They take the 4 remaining noble families of the Trunsoest Empire, Augustus, Castilla, Einhorn, and Sauron, and back each of them in building their own nation. For families. For nations. Those nations become Lone, Fasak, Fanapotter, and Intis. The northern continent that Klein Moretti is born into, 1,500 years later, the continent of churches and steam engines and beyond organizations and secret pathways, is built on this exact foundation. Everything Klein touches in Season 1 is an echo of the 4th epic. Every family name that appears is a descendant of someone who stood in one of these empires. Every pathway he walks is something one of these 4 emperors either created, broke, or died holding. Now step all the way back. Look at every player in this story at the same time. Solomon built the most sophisticated system of control the northern continent had ever seen. He enforced disharmony among his subordinates for centuries without a single serious challenge. He backed it with the true creator's power and his own sequence zero authority. And two people he was not watching closely enough walked in his blind spot and killed him. Trunsoest had the full endorsement of 6 gods, a political marriage that turned into something genuine, the support of 4 angel families, an entire ancient race loyal to his empire, and more legitimate backing than any ruler in history. He still died in a war that spiraled beyond what any single player could control. Tudor paid for godhood with pieces of his mind. He stabbed his way into a pathway that was not made for him, assembled a coalition of dangerous, incompatible families through sheer force, refused to align with anyone, and built something that stood for 500 years on nothing but his own terrifying will. He still fell. Salinger watched patiently, moved late, aimed for something beyond godhood itself, and the ambition consumed what the war could not. For sequence zeros, every single one of them gone. And here's the question this whole era quietly asks, the one that does not have a clean answer. What exactly did any of them win? Solomon won the northern continent and lost it to people he trusted. Trunsoest won the war and lost the era. Tudor won godhood and lost his mind. Salinger won the aftermath and lost himself chasing something higher. They all reached the top of what their world offered. And the top was not safe either. So the real question, the one that sits underneath all the empires and pathways and wars and politics, is this. If sequence zero is not enough, what is? If for the most powerful beings in history, all in the same way, what does that tell you about the nature of power itself in this world? Lord of Mysteries does not give you easy answers. It gives you the ruins of 4 empires, the graves of 4 gods, a continent that had to be rebuilt from scratch by the survivors, and a small note, buried in the records of the 4th epoch, about 2 men who once stood in the same throne room, looked at each other across a shared victory, and already knew what was coming. They knew, and they went ahead with it anyway. That is the 4th epoch, and that is the weight that every single thing in the main story of Lord of Mysteries is built on top of. The next time you see the name Tudor, the next time you hear Backlund mentioned, the next time someone references the old empires or the 4 families or the ancient war, remember this. Remember 4 gods who climbed to the very top of what was possible, and remember that none of them came down the way they expected.